Listen rather than tell. What makes this such an important coaching principle? Well, all of the leadership gurus, including Dr. John C. Maxwell, he mentioned in his book, Leadership Goal, that the best leaders are good listeners. In fact, Stephen Covey, in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, talk about seeking to understand before being understood. Now, this is all referring to the skill of listening. In fact, this is a crucial skill for a coach. In fact, I would like to ask you a question. As a coach, how many % of the time do you think you should spend listening and how many % of the time talking? Well, you might have guessed it. I would like to recommend to you the best practice would be 70 to 80% of the time as a coach, you are listening and 20 to 30% talking. Now, I would recommend a minimum of 70%. Just imagine, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So if we spend 2/3 of the time listening, it will be round up to 70%. And 30%, 1/3 would be talking. Now, with this ratio in mind, I'd like to ask you another question. If you have only 20 to 30% airtime to open your mouth and talk as a coach, what would be the best use of your time? What would be the most wise use of this time that you have? What do you think? Well, I think that one of the best use of the time, you might have thought about it too, is asking the right questions. Indeed, so most of the time when a coach opens his or her mouth is actually asking the right questions. What else would you do with that limited amount of airtime? Well, there are 4 more things. Most of the time is spent asking great questions, and sometimes you would reinforce, appreciate, encourage the coachee and say, that's really interesting, and then ask the next question, and what else? And the third thing for you to do is, in fact, if you're listening well, you could do it well, is to paraphrase, summarize, pull out the key words and understanding of what you have been listening to for 70 to 80% of the time. And the fourth thing that you could do is that if you have been listening long enough, you might have noticed certain trends or patterns or behavioral consistencies and habits. This is where you could ask permission from your coachee to offer feedback that might be helpful to help your client achieve better results. The fifth thing that you could do is, if you have a great idea that you think could be helpful to your coaches, is to get their consent before giving them a suggestion. Now, there are 5 things that you do as a coach, but you only have 20 to 30% airtime. So indeed, so you will not have a lot of time to give suggestions. Most of the time will be spent wisely asking the right questions, encouraging the coachee, and paraphrasing. And once in a while, if it's really relevant and helpful, that's where feedback comes in and giving limited suggestions after getting consent from the coachee.